I'm Morgan, and today I'm excited to share my thoughts on the Fallout TV show so far, up to episode 3, and this video will contain spoilers. So, first of all, I have played the majority of Fallout 2. I ended up not completely finishing the game, but I got to the point where you're about to, board the ship, so I am very close to the end of that game. So I came into the TV show knowing some of the lore already. And I loved seeing the Brahmin, and I was completely rubbish and thought that the red scorpion was supposed to be a Deathclaw, but it's no, of course Deathclaws are bigger than that. But I was really excited to see the red scorpion, and dog meat. I called the dog oh, that's dog meat. I think there are multiple dog meats in the games. You can have multiple dog companions. How do I put this? There are multiple games and there are dogs in some of the different games. So I thought that was a cool little reference. But I would say the show is very gratuitous on the violence, because I know that Fallout 2 has a lot of violence, but it's with very 90s graphics. And so I don't really think of the games as being super gratuitous just because, 90s graphics. At least the older ones. But the show's definitely very, very gratuitous. Oh my gosh, oh yay, we get to see a fork in someone's eye. How nice. No, it's a little over the top for me. It feels a little bit to the point where it's oh, do we really need to see that? Can't we just show this off screen or show the aftermath of this fight? Why do we have to see the actual fight? It's just, there are a lot of moments like that where it's oh, this is a little too much. Just a little too much, where it's I would rather see the pixelated in 90s graphics. Thank you. I'm not, I get that the world itself is very brutal, it's very barbaric. It's if you are surviving a nuclear apocalypse, of course the people who have survived that are going to be really hardened, very, very gruff people who will do anything to survive. You have to in that world. And so I understand that there's a point where it's you have to show that to show contrast to, say, I don't know, Lucy's character. And oh my gosh, I love the people in Lucy's Vault. I love them. I love them. I love them. They remind me of theater people. I love them. Just the way that they were trying to solve their conflict in the the third episode, where there's this town meeting, and it feels oh my gosh, it reminds me of how theater people solve problems, where it's just let's just talk about it. I don't know if they use the word open dialogue, but it's giving me open dialogue vibes, and I love it. I love it. And how they're well, we can't treat the prisoners the way that they treated us. We have to be the better people. We have to lead by example. And I'm oh my god, that sounds exactly like something that I would say. Lucy's Vault, it reminds me of my conflict resolution style. So I love that. And how there's this point where someone's going to be hey, I want to talk to you privately. Let's talk about this big important issue. And they're well, why can't you just share that in front of the group? Just tell everyone. And then it's hey, okay, well, your dad didn't used to do it that way, or the previous counselor didn't used to do it this way, or head vault person. They're no way, just tell it to everyone. And then he's oh yeah, by the way, the water chip's broken, and we only have 2 months worth of water tops, not including the prisoners who are probably going to use the water quicker. So yeah. It's oh yeah, that's exactly something that is how I would solve conflicts, where it's I feel I'm someone who's very much so doesn't like to have conversations in private, and instead is if I have something important to hear, the entire group should be able to hear it, So just that conflict resolution style, it's oh my gosh, I vibe with this. I vibe with these people. I vibe with these people. I would love to live in a little what's the word? If I had to be in a post-apocalyptic world, I would want to be in a post-apocalyptic world with these people, is what I'm trying to say. It's oh my gosh, they're so nice. I love them. I don't think I do well in that particular vault because of my immune system, but since their primary crop is crop or something, and it's yeah, that wouldn't do very well with me. But other than that, it's oh my god, I love them. Also, okay, I also don't like how it's a very government controlled sort of economic system, because it's I think the vault people are the ones assigning the jobs, like, because Lucy's younger brother, I can't remember his name, but, like, they're assigning him as a punishment, like, 2 different jobs. So it's like, this is a very controlled economy, like, controlled by the government, so I don't like it, and I feel like it's very un-American. Like, this is supposed to be, like, raw Americana, and yet they're basically living in a commune, so I don't really like that. Like, I don't think it really fits with the idea of, like, if they're trying to rebuild America to be very Americana, shouldn't they be very cutthroat and capitalist? So I don't really like how it's kind of like a commune, but other than, you know, the government control of the economic system, it seems like a nice vault. So I'm like, oh, it's so sweet. I love their conflict resolution style. I love their, like, let's try and work things out as a group. I love how they're just, like, everyone there is so enthusiastic, except for Lucy's brother. Everyone's just so enthusiastic all the time, and, like, oh my god, it just reminds me of theater people. And Lucy reminds me of me. Like, I don't know, like, or at least when I was watching the show with my significant other, he was, like, pointing out, like, times where it's like, oh god, she sounds like you. And, like, that, where it's like, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Like, times where it's like, she's just, like, trying to talk to someone with a gun, being like, hey, let's resolve this peacefully. And so it's like, oh my god, you're right, that sounds like me. That sounds like something I would try. Like, I don't know, Lucy reminds me of me. I don't know, like, or at least my conflict resolution style, and how she's, like, so very idealistic, like, I see the world as a better, like, I don't know, she's like always trying to see, like, the world is a better place. She's always trying to see the good in people. She's always trying to be like, well, let's have these beautiful core American values of, like, talking things out and whatever. Like, I don't know, she sees herself as, like, kind of, how do I put this, like, inherently, like, she's fighting for the good. She's trying to rebuild something beautiful, and it's like, oh my god, this sounds like me. This sounds like me. Is this how I sound as a libertarian? Probably. Where it's like, well, because I see because I want to solve things, like, how do I put this? Like, I feel like I'm someone who, like Lucy, is always trying to act in, like, good faith, and whereas it's like the rest of society, it's like the wasteland, like, we're not gonna have the same conflict resolution style, so this isn't gonna work out, sort of thing. So, like, I don't know, it just Lucy reminds me of me. So yeah, I love that so far. It's like, oh my god, I see myself represented in the show, like, my way of trying to solve problems and interact with the world. Like, oh yes, let's just work together and try and solve everything. And so it's very cathartic seeing her as a character. It's like, oh my god, that's so me. But yeah, I like it so far, except for it's, like, really gratuitous. And I love, one thing that I love too is how the doctor who dies, like, he suddenly brings up the banana-flavored cyanide pills are, like, the most humane invention that Vault-Tec has come up with. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah. Because Vault-Tec is not necessarily, the greatest. Like, how do I put this? Like, I haven't played all of the games, so I can really only speak to what I know from, like, the second one. But I know that Vault-Tec wasn't always doing things that were good. Yeah. Because I feel like there's one character, I can't remember which character it is, but there was some character who was, like, in a vault that was, like, not actually radiation proof or something, and wasn't that how they got some of the ghouls in the California area? I can't remember which vault it was, and I can't remember which character it was, but I feel like there was a character who, like, survived that, and so it's like, we know that the not all of the vaults did what they said they were supposed to do. And so I love that subtle hint that, like, hey, Vault-Tec's kind of really screwed up. Vault-Tec isn't necessarily great. And I like, too, how it shows, because in the Fallout universe, like, the Enclave are not good people. They're perfectly fine doing, like, human experimentation. They're perfectly, like, fine doing whatever the heck they want to do, at the expense of everyone else. So I liked that subtle hint of like, hey, Vault-Tec and the Enclave aren't necessarily good people. And having that contrast between like the Vault dwellers who are like this very idealistic, like, oh my gosh, we're gonna rebuild America. And then having the remains of the post-apocalyptic American government being like, really, like, not great people. Like, just having that contrast, I think, is really interesting and creates for, like, really dynamic storytelling and world building. And I just, like, oh, wow, yeah, that's gonna be a conflict, I assume, that's gonna come up at some point. Like, how the heck Lucy would interact with the Enclave. Like, I don't, like, how the heck would she, like, what the heck would she do if she was faced with them? Like, I don't know. So I'm very excited to see how this progresses. I do love, like, all the references to the Fallout lore. Like, I love it. 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 I love the choice to have, like, a ghoul character among the cast, because, like, in the second game, at least, you could pick up Lenny as your companion. I'm pretty sure Lenny was one of my companions. I think I've tried to pick up, like, 5 different ones. You can have up to 5, right? Like, I know I tried to pick up, like, 5 by the end. But it's, the one ghoul companion reminds me of Lenny, except Lenny was nicer. But yeah, so I love it. I love like, we get to see the different characters. The only thing that I haven't seen yet, like, that I really want to see is, like, a super mutant. But actually, would those even exist at that point in the story? Because if I remember right, the super mutants were caused by FEV or something, and I don't think was there super immediately after the nukes dropped. I think that was something that showed up a little bit later. So depending on how long it's actually been since the nukes dropped, how many generations have passed, and depending on what their geographic location is, we might not be seeing super mutants in their locations. So, like, that's something where it's just, like, I'm a little loose on the timeline, so I would like to see super mutants, but I also get where maybe they wouldn't make sense lore-wise, and also Deathclaws. But I did like the, oh my gosh, the mutant bear, oh my gosh. And I love their Brotherhood of Steel, like, how they're represented, because the reality is the Brotherhood of Steel are not necessarily nice. Like, they're not necessarily nice guys, they're not necessarily nice people, or at least, like, it seemed like they were trying to hoard, at least from the game, like, my impression was that they were trying to hoard technology. They were not necessarily trying to use that technology to improve the lives of all wastelanders. It's like they're trying to hoard it for themselves, keep it out of bad hands or something. Like, that was the impression I got. And so seeing just like, how do I put this? How they're kind of cutthroat. They're not necessarily good people. They're willing to, like, throw away human lives all the time. So it's like, or at least they see the squires or whatever as expendable. And so I like how we see that they're not inherently good. I also like to, like, just the random references to the past, to the pre-war world. Like, we see one of the characters is named Titus, which is very clearly a Roman name. Like, to me, I always think Titus Andronicus, which is by Shakespeare, but that's a Roman name. And, like, the references to knights, the references to squires, like the knight in the power armor, that's kind of cool. But it's just, we're seeing them pulling from history and reworking that to fit their goal, their ideas. They're pulling from history, but they're not properly recreating history. They're twisting it. And so I loved that. Like, I loved seeing that, because it's like, that is how they are portrayed in the games, if I remember correctly. And I guess, like, I don't think I've really seen any religion thus far, but I remember in the games they had, like, the followers of the apocalypse, I think, because I think we see one of those at one point in one of the cities in, like, NCR or something. And also, what was it? They had the one that's, I can't remember the name of it, but where they're trying to escape. I think it's supposed to be a ripoff of Scientology, but, like, I remember they had, like, a ripoff of Scientology or something that was supposed to be, like, heavily inspired by it in the second game. And so I would have liked to see more, like, exploration of how spirituality presents itself in the post-war world. Like, I would like to see more of that, because that is something that is explored in the game, so I'd love to see more of that in the show. So yeah, those are just my thoughts up to, I'd say, through the end of episode 3 so far. My significant other and I have just been like watching it like one episode at a time, and so it's like I haven't really binge watched it. Whereas, like, I feel like we binge-watched Arcane, but this one is just, like, a little too violent-y, graphic-y for us to want to, like, watch multiple episodes right in a row. Like, it gets to be too much sometimes. So, yeah, those are just my honest thoughts. And I hope y'all are having a very happy day. Bye!